Okay guys, this video is going to be about how to drop the fuel tank on your C5 or C6 Corvette. Specific to the C6, but the C5 should be about the same system because they both have the split tank with the two tanks and the crossover tube. First thing you want to do is get the car in the air. You're going to need to get the car at least 24 inches in the air because the fuel tank, it's super tall. I'll include a picture of it here, of it out. And the fuel tank is really tall. So I have a 2-post max jack lift at home, so I'm able to use my lift to get the car all the way in the air, and I'm actually sitting under it right now. So I'll get the car in the air and you'll have plenty of room to drop the fuel tank. What you're going to do is disconnect the battery up front or in the back, depending if you got a Z06 or a base model's D51. Next thing you want to do is actually take out the exhaust. Take the mufflers out. There's 2 hangers in the back that you can either unbolt from the rear bumper or you could try to slide out through the hangers. I just unbolt it from the bumper because it's easier. So unbolt the rear hangers. There's 2 of them on each side, so there's 4 total. Disconnect the muffler brackets here. And also, I think I took out the X pipe as well. So you can take out these 2 bolts and slide out. This is a Cook's. No, this is the Corsa mid pipe. No, I'm sorry, that's Cook's. And you can slide out the X pipe as well. So slide that out and you'll get plenty of room. If you have the factory exhaust, just disconnect it from the rear manifolds. Get the mufflers out of the way because you need as much room as you can get. Get the mufflers out of the way. Now you can take the heat shields off. These heat shields are, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts on each side. I believe those are a 15mm bolt. Disconnect those 15mm bolts on each side, and now you'll be able to get access to drop the tank. On the driver's side, you need a quick disconnect fuel tool right here. You're going to pop this line off the tank and use your disconnect tool to remove the chassis fuel line to the gas tank fuel line, because this purple, see that purple sticker? It says actually XLR on it, Z06 XLRV. You're actually going to pop, that actually goes up, like vertical, down and into the tank. It almost does like a U-turn. So you're going to want to disconnect that. That's the body fuel, chassis fuel line to the gas tank fuel line. Disconnect that. And now you're pretty much going to be able to disconnect the tank. Also, up here, you're going to want to open the fuel door. There's going to be three or four bolts that hold the fuel filler neck to the fuel door assembly. Disconnect those, and you'll be able to push that down a little bit. And also, for each side, it depends which tank you're going to tank out. Take the rear wheels off. I should have mentioned that earlier. Take the rear wheels off. And you want to take the fender liners out. So you want to take off all of these bolts. There's like 6 or 7 of them, as well as the brake duct. There's the Z06 has the brake duct right here. So pull that out, remove the liner, and you're going to want to do that on both sides if you're taking out the passenger side too. Okay guys, with the inner fender liner out on both sides, with the exhaust out of the way, the shields, the heat shields on the bottom, with those all removed, and on the driver's side with the fuel filler neck disconnected from the fender itself, you actually will be able to slide the tank down, because these metal shields on the bottom actually support the gas tank when there's fuel in it. After you slide the fuel tank down a little bit, you'll actually will be able to feel the crossover tube. The crossover tube is way up there. You can kind of see the, yeah, you can see right there. See that metal piece? That like ribbed tube? That's actually the crossover tube. Alright, so as you can see, there's the metal locking ring collar. Then there's a plastic locking ring that I'm kind of pointing to with the flashlight. That plastic locking ring has to be moved out of the way. So grab a flat-headed screwdriver, push up on that tab, and you should be able to push that plastic, push it up and push it to the right, and you should be able to get enough room to clear that locking ring out of the way. So after you get that plastic locking ring out of the way, you're going to want to pull that metal collar out. Just like I said, you're going to grab it, twist it to the left, and pull out all at the same time. Now, on my car, since my car is over 10 years old, the ethanol in the fuel actually caused the plastic fuel lines that are inside that crossover tube to like glue to the fuel tank. So when I actually separated the metal column, that metal collar, when I took that off, it actually broke the fuel lines on the inside of the driver's tank the first time. So be prepared to replace those lines. So pull the collar out, and that should be it. There shouldn't be anything really holding the fuel tank up anymore. The fuel tank will drop. This whole assembly will fall toward you, the plastic tank. There might be a vent line that is holding the tank up. Yeah, I think there's a vent line somewhere in there that you're gonna have to disconnect as well. You'll see it. You'll feel it when you drop the tank. Disconnect that vent line as well, and you'll be able to see everything. You'll be able to get the tank out of the way. So the tank will come down. Now, if you're only doing the driver's side, you'll take the tank, put it on the ground. You'll take metal, a brass punch, or I just use a screwdriver to hit the tank, to hit the locking ring on top of the tank. Use a brass punch or a screwdriver, righty tighty, lefty loosey. So push it toward the left, and that locking ring will eventually loosen, and you pop up. Now you'll be able to have access to pull the fuel pump out. Now the problem is with pulling the fuel pump out is there's those plastic lines inside the tank that I talked about. There's also the fuel level sensor on that side. You have to be careful with all of that. You can take the fuel level sensor and the pump out as one assembly, but those fuel lines will still be inside the tank, and they have to be hooked up to the fuel pump. So disconnect the lines, feed them through, and disconnect the lines, pull the pump out, and now you're able to put the Z06 assembly in. Put the Z06 pump in. Now you're gonna have to be careful because those lines, they have to twist, they have to be sitting a certain way for you to feed them through the pump, through the sensor. You're just gonna have to play around with it. I can't really explain it. Unless I videoed it, I can't really explain how to do it. You're just gonna have to figure it out by feel of which way those lines have to go inside the tank and twist up into the fuel pump. I have a picture of that, but I don't have a video of it, unfortunately. So you're going to want to put those, put those lines on the pump, put that all assemble, and then put the fuel pump back into the tank, and then with your brass punch or your flathead screwdriver, hit that locking ring back to the right, and make sure you get that thing fully seated, because if you don't get that thing fully seated, it will leak and it will smell like gas. I actually had to drop my tank yet a second or third time because I had a fuel vapor smell. And it was because I didn't get that locking ring fully seated, especially on the driver's side. So get that locking ring fully seated and you should be good to go. Now, like I said, on that metal collar up there, there's two fuel lines inside of it. I actually snapped both of them because the ethanol glued everything together. So there's two lines inside that. It's one assembly. They're kind of, those two lines are glued together with some plastic clips. I had to replace that fuel line in the middle, going through the tank, going through the crossover tube. And I also replaced the lines inside the fuel tank on the driver's side. Now the passenger side was the same ordeal. Take out the splash guard, take out all the bolts on the bottom here, and we'll get the tank down, disconnect the collar the same way. I believe it's twist it to the left and pull back. Yeah, righty tighty, lefty loosey. So move that there's a plastic collar, plastic locking ring, move that, And then grab the collar, twist it, pull it out, and then you'll be able to get the tank loose because the fuel lines are disconnected. Again, I snapped the lines inside, those plastic lines inside on the passenger fuel tank. Now on the passenger side, it's just the lines. There's no pump, and there's a fuel level sensor on this side. So what I did was I replaced the plastic lines. There's two lines. I replaced the fuel level sensor on this side as well as the passenger side. I'm sorry, the driver's side. Actually, I don't think the Z06 fuel pump came with a sensor. I had to buy it separate. Buy two of those sensors. 1, 2 for both tanks, and also replace the lines on the inside, and you should be good to go. The passenger side, when you put, again, you have that same issue with the lines have to go in a certain way. There's the fuel pump bucket. It looks like a fuel pump bucket, kind of like the driver's side, but it has that same locking ring. You got to get that all tightened up fully. Another word of advice that I just thought of is when you replace the fuel level sensors on the passenger and the driver's side, make sure you pay attention to the wiring, because I actually had to like Google, like the instructions for the fuel level sensors didn't come with plug, you know, this harness into this terminal. Like there was no instructions with it for wiring. It may not matter, I don't know, but I know when I took these apart, when I took this pump and or this tank and this tank apart, I didn't pay attention to the wiring. So I just plugged them in and guessed, but I did the same, like I did, I think it was a gray and brown wire. I think I just plugged them in the same way in both pumps, and thankfully everything works. I even looked on Corvette forum for specific instructions on how to wire those fuel level sensors, but I didn't see anything specific about it. So put the wiring in. I just did the same on both tanks, like I said. Put the fuel sensor level in, put that into the tank. Make sure you put the O-ring, the green O-ring, the bucket. Put the bucket in the tank, put the locking ring. Tighten that all the way down, otherwise you'll have a vapor leak and you'll smell fuel, so you don't want that to happen. So put that all in. Connect the... Here's what I did. On the lines that go into the crossover, what I did was I sprayed the hell out of those down with some silicone lubricant. I sprayed both the tank side as well as the crossover tube side. Sprayed both of those down, and everything snapped right in. Like those lines, they plug in. I'll include some pictures of it, but those lines plugged right into each other, and I didn't really have any problem with those things going together. Now, like I said, I did have to take the driver's side out twice, 2 or 3 times, and when I took it out after lubricating those lines, after I lubricated everything, when I went to take it apart the second time or third time, they unplugged right away. So nothing broke, nothing physically snapped, which sucks because I don't know why they use plastic fuel lines inside of a plastic tank on these cars. It's just stupid, because like I said, after 10 years or so, the ethanol just gums everything up and everything like fuse welded together and it wouldn't come apart. So after you get all of the crossover tube, the fuel tanks, everything, you know, ready to put back in. Oh, and also for the crossover tube, there's a 10mm bolt up above the transmission. You're gonna have to feel for it because you can't see it because of the trans. You just reach around and there's a bolt up top. Take that off and you'll get even more wiggle room with that flexible tube, and they'll make you even a little bit more room. Now, I actually dropped my entire drivetrain for my swap. Because this driver's side was a total bitch, and I had to do, like I said, I had to drop it 2 or 3 times. On the last time I decided to take this fuel system apart, I said fuck it. I actually dropped the transmission, the torque tube, and I did a clutch job at the same time. I'll link that to a previous video that I've filmed. So that swap was actually part of this swap, was to replace the clutch. But anyway, besides the point, I got once you get the fuel tanks back up. Oh, I used a floor jack with a big, actually, that red Greg Smith tall, short jack stand, whatever you want to call it. I use that to actually help push the gas tank back up into the car, because that gas tank above your head is it weighs a good amount of weight. So get the gas tank up in the car, hook up that crossover tube, hook up the plastic locking ring like I said earlier, push it back to lock it. Did that. I think I did driver's side then passenger, or passenger then driver. I'm not really sure which side I did first, but hook everything back up, and then rehook that 10mm bolt up that holds the crossover tube, that bracket. Hook that back up. Reconnect the crossover tube on both sides. Reconnect the vent line. There's a vent line here on the driver's side. I know there's a vent line on the passenger side. Rehook that up to the top of the tank. There's a wire harness on the top. Unplug that, or plug that back in. That's the one thing I forgot. You know, reconnect the wire harness on the top of the pump and on top of the fuel level sensor on this side. Rehook all that back up. Rehook up this fuel line right here, this quick disconnect. Rehook that back up. Back on the outside, you're gonna re-screw in those 3 or 4 bolts. So you reattach the fuel filler neck to the fender. Then you're gonna want to put your liners back in on both sides. Put the liners back in. Then put your wheels back on. And that's really going to be about it. So you should be good to go. You know, hook everything back up. The fuel system on this car really sucks. It's the worst system I've ever worked on. Like I said, I had to drop this driver's side tank 2 or 3 times. Make sure you use plenty of like silicone-based lubricant to rehook those, when you rehook those lines back up. Lube everything up. And that should be about it. Like I said, the only other word of advice would be just buy the plastic tubes on the tank. I don't think they're that much. I think they're like $30 per side. So I think you'll have like $60 in each tank. So $30 for the tubes. Replace the tubes. And also I replaced the crossover tube as well. The lines inside that, like I said, because that snapped as well. So I think I have like $100 in plastic fuel lines that I replaced, but just buy it, because you're gonna end up snapping it. Because like I said, those lines they stick together. You can't pull them apart, or if you do pull them apart, they'll break. That's the other bad part of the setup. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of replacing the fuel pump on a C6 Corvette. You know, with the goods and the bads of the system being a pain in the ass to work on. I want to say, if a shop's going to do a fuel pump on a Corvette, it's going to be $1,000 for labor. Yeah, I think I've seen that number before. It's expensive to replace a fuel pump. So if you've got a lift, you've got the tools, and you got the skills, I would say go ahead and do it yourself. Save yourself the coin, and you know, replace your full fuel system. So thanks guys for watching. Have a good one. Thanks for watching my video. Don't forget to like it, and if you haven't already, please subscribe.